Hey everybody, coming to you live here Thursday, a little bit earlier, but I promised my son I'd pick him up from school. So what I'm going to do today is a training that I did inside another Facebook group for entrepreneurs. The topic today is about burnout within the entrepreneurial community and three issues that plague the burnt out entrepreneur and different tactics on how to overcome them. Okay, so there's a fact: 50% of all businesses fail within the first 3 years, right? That's pretty well known. The second stat that I recently uncovered in a LinkedIn poll was that 63% of entrepreneurs feel burnt out, right? That's a pretty high statistic. Now, just to compare that to salaried professionals, on average, about 52% of those people feel burnt out. This is a 21% higher number than in a salaried professional. Why is that? I think it's because entrepreneurs face different, unique challenges that salaried professionals don't. Um, what it does tell me, this is kind of what these two numbers link together for me, is that this burnout must be playing a huge role in this failure rate of 50%. So just to kind of go back to where we are before, what is burnout? Burnout is the physical or mental collapse caused by overwork and stress. And I think the two keys are overwork and stress. Every single entrepreneur I know, and myself having been one and being one, understands that that is part of the entrepreneurial journey. You're always constantly overworked and you're constantly stressed. You're stressed about money, you're stressed about the building perhaps that you own, employees, payroll, taxes, like things that a normal salary professional doesn't necessarily have to worry about, an entrepreneur is thinking about. Some of the emotional symptoms, as I've described in some of my other lives, is loss of motivation, sense of failure, feeling trapped, defeated, which kind of goes into this giving up quality, a cynical or negative outlook, and just a general dissatisfaction and sense of that you have no accomplishments to show for it, right? So how does that show up? Well, that shows up. One of the big feelings that I see and I've heard from a lot of people is that when they're running their own business, they feel alone. They feel isolated, right? So if you're feeling burnt out and you already feel a sense of isolation, what's going to happen is you're going to withdraw from more people. Now that could be your friends and family, it could be the people at work, right? You could start procrastinating your work. You could be looking for immediate satisfaction when you get home. So that could be through food, through alcohol, through drugs, through other vices like maybe it's gambling, maybe it's pornography, right? So how can the biggest question is how can long can anybody live in a state of burnout before they break, right? When does the pressure get so great and the payout seems so small or too impossible to believe anymore? And in the case of entrepreneurs, that is the dream of the successful business, right? So 50% of entrepreneurs fail in the first 3 years. Failure for an entrepreneur in most cases is when they give up. It's when they stop, when they just don't believe that there is a payout in their business any longer, right? And if that goes hand in hand with the feeling of burnout, burnout is a direct contributor to this, right? So let's look I'll tell you a quick story of how we got here and why this is personal to me. Um, as a fellow entrepreneur, I know exactly how the feeling of burnout plays into your success or ultimate failure in your business, right? 5 years ago, my wife and I bought a dental practice. I was burnt out from oil and gas in my career there, and I thought I would just go start a dental practice with my wife, and all of my problems would be solved. Needless that I know at the time, I brought that burnout with me. In 3 years, we sold that practice at a significant loss and walked away. And I remember those 3 years vividly. There were frights, there was stress over money, there was the constant thinking of the business. Every conversation my wife and I had revolved around this third child, right? That neither one of us wanted anymore. And it wasn't like our kids who we love. So even though there's stress, and anxiety around having children, this is the child that we didn't want. So, I ate, slept, breathed the business, right? I couldn't escape it. It consumed me, right? So the physical results and the physical manifestation of that stress for me was extreme anxiety, panic attacks, right? And it created fractured relationships with my kids, fractured relationships with my wife. Um, and I went into a shell and froze in panic. I know we all talk about the fight and flight and freeze of, a fear. I went into freeze, and I could really cut myself off from a lot of people. I couldn't do anything. Um, I was in a position where I couldn't do anything for myself. I couldn't do anything for my family, and I was definitely kind of useless in the business as well. So what did I do? Right? I am the cautionary tale. I gave up. I quit on the business. I went out. I got a 9 to 5 salary job, and I left the mess to my wife to clean up. So you can imagine the ripple effect that that had on all of those choices in my life, right? So this experience, though, I would never, without this experience, without having to hit that real low, I never would have learned how to overcome burnout. And what I want to share with everybody today is that it's not the burnout that's causing you to fail in the business. It's the thoughts that you're having about the business and how those thoughts are creating your reality. So I know I've gone through this before, but there are 3 things you need to feel to overcome burnout, right? These are your 3 feelings. There's optimism, gratitude, and hope, right? These are the 3 feelings. And I know all of us who started a business or any new endeavor come into it feeling optimistic, grateful, and hopeful, right? We believe that, we believe when the business is making us money, we'll be able to do X, Y, Z. I can't wait to have a team or support, be part of the community. Once we're big enough, once this business has grown, I'll be able to do bigger and better things. Um, or the other trap we get into, once this business is making enough money, I'll be able to stop working, right? But what we fail to do from the beginning is plan for all of the drama that's going to come on, right? So if we look at, kind of point number 1, optimism, right? The opposite of optimism is negativity, obviously, and that is one of the symptoms of burnout. So the minute you lose optimism around your business, you're already on the slippery slope down into that, basically cave of despair. So why is it that we can start off very optimistic and then do a full 180 and completely kind of crap all over everything, right? Why are we so negative on our business, and why is it so hard for us to switch back? Well, there's good news here, and this is kind of with all the negative things in our life. You're not really to blame for this. It's your brain, right? Your brain is programmed to keep you safe, right? When you are experiencing something hard, your brain will create thoughts to dissuade you from continuing along that hard path. Now, in business, we're experiencing obstacles constantly. Constantly. It could be the plumbing one day, it could be insurance, it could be a lawsuit, it could be an employee quitting on you, right? Constantly faced with challenges. And our brain is firing every single time it encounters a challenge, and it's telling you to stop. It's telling you, why are you putting yourself through this, right? So what needs to happen is a control mechanism on all that negativity. It's just like, would you hand over the keys to the car to your child, or are you going to be in the driver's seat? Your child might point out all of the dangers on the road. Look, there's another car. Look, there are lights. There's a pothole. But it's just like driving. When you first start, you see all the obstacles everywhere. But after time, you can do it in your sleep, and those no longer become as drastic as they were in the beginning. And that's one of the things we don't train ourselves to do as entrepreneurs, to look at those obstacles as not real fear inducing problems, but just another thing to be aware of, right? Number two is gratitude. Every single person, again, just like with optimism, goes into starting a business with gratitude, right? However, we oftentimes place our happiness in what the business will do for us once it delivers something. Very few of us are prepared for what it's going to take to get there. This is why I believe the 3 year mark is when people are tired of being in burnout for 3 years and they quit on it. So, the biggest mistake you can make is to think to yourself, this once this business makes me money, I'll be able to do XYZ, right? The question we need to ask is, how long will I do this without seeing the results that I want? Right? To give yourself a timeline. If it's 2 years, if your results are $1 million, but you want it within 2 years, ask yourself that before you go into business. Because when your business doesn't deliver that to you, are you going to pull the plug? Right? For other people, it's their life passion to start their business. So if their answer is, well, I'll do this forever, I will figure out every opportunity, or through every challenge, I'll go through every obstacle so I can succeed no matter what, that person's going to have the strength and the fortitude to overcome the challenges and be grateful for the opportunity to do what they love, not for the end result that they thought they were going to get. Now, the third one is hope. Now, hope is the tricky one because once hope's gone, it's dead, right? What we typically do at the end, or as we start to question our decisions and why we're in this business and why we're doing what we're doing, is that we chalk things up to the universe, right? This wasn't meant to be, or everything's conspiring against me. It was the economy, it was COVID, it could be anything, right? But we wrap up all our hopes and dreams on an event happening, right? And like I said before, if you went into business hoping to retire and hoping to make lots of money so you can stop working, you're probably making the wrong decision. Right? Simon Sinek, in his book The Infinite Game, talks about seeing your business or your corporation as something that will continue and continue without an end. It's infinite. And if that case, what can bring you hope in the day-to-day grind? You need to have that daily hope that you're accomplishing something unique from your business, or your business is creating something unique for people. What problem do you solve? Who's going to benefit from this? Are you excited to get what you have to offer out there, right? And would you do this for free? That's a very compelling question to ask yourself, because if the answer is no, maybe look at doing something else. So if you can answer these questions honestly, you're already one step ahead of the pack and probably the other 50% of this statistic. So I really hope you guys appreciated this take on the entrepreneur's journey as it pertains to burnout. If you're feeling any of those feelings, if you are kind of nearing that first, that if you're in that first 3 years of starting a business and you're feeling that burnout, take the burnout quiz below. The first step I always say is awareness, to identify where you're at. Maybe ask yourself some of these questions. See if you're feeling these three feelings. If you still are, you're in great shape. You can always recover, right? And if you need additional help, go to my website at pbeskus.com, and hopefully I'll see you all next week. Thanks. Bye.